Hey everyone, it's Kate with Maritime Ceramics. Welcome back. Today's glaze review is coming to you thanks to you. So I put up a poll a while ago asking what glaze you guys would most like to see tested, and I think there were 4 different options, and this one won. And I'm gonna go with Bougainvillea. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I meant to check before I started filming this, and I did not, so that's on me. Unfortunately looks a little bit like blood spatter. Bougainvillea, awkward name, pretty glaze. So I popped down to my local pottery supply store, which is New Ceramics here in Fredericton, to pick up this bottle of Spectrum's Bougainvillea. I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who voted in that poll, both for engaging, because I appreciate it and I want to know what you're interested in, but also for picking this glaze because I really wanted to give it a try. And now you've given me an excuse to do that. This is a cone 6 glaze, well, cone 5-6 it says. It is lead-free, non-toxic. Always good, most glazes are, but it's always good to double check. This one says it's dinnerware safe, which is great because when they're not dinnerware safe, sometimes it gets a little challenging to figure out where to use them. This is part of the floating glazes line. So similar to Sangria or Nori Green, both of those are floating glazes as well. And I have reviewed both of those, so you can go have a look at those after this review if you're interested. And I am going to compare Bougainvillea, or however it's pronounced, with Sangria, because from what I've seen online, and Spectrum's test tiles are terrible. There's a lot to love about Spectrum glazes, but their test tiles isn't one of them. It looks different on every website that you look at, and even the ones that I see in person, you know, in those little physical test tiles that are at the pottery studio, they don't necessarily match what you get out of the kiln. So test tiles, not one of their strengths. Although I adore Sangria, it does sometimes give me problems. Sometimes I get some pinholing and blistering in it. And I think it's when it gets fired too hot. It does better at the bottom of the kiln, which is cooler. So it'll be interesting to see how this glaze compares. All right, how are we going to test this glaze out today? First and foremost, of course, we're going to do a couple of testers of just our test glaze. I think this is the Bayside Buff Eco Clay, I think they're calling it, and from New Ceramics. It was just released this week. There were some testers out, and I was lucky enough to get my hands on one of the testers. And actually this week I'm going to be going down to pick up my first boxes of the production version of this clay, and I will do a test on that, and I will post that to my YouTube channel. So we're going to test it on this buff clay, and we're going to test it on white clay. I usually like to do a red clay tester, but I don't have any red clay test tiles, so I am sorry. I think we'll do 3 coats on the inside and 2 coats on the outside. That will tell us whether it needs 2 coats or 3 coats, and it also kind of hedges our bets so that hopefully it won't run off of the pot onto the cookie. Apologize for my dirty nails. I've been working with red clay, working on some test tiles for you guys, so yeah, they're in terrible shape, and just try to avert your eyes. Then we're going to put it over Old Forge's Misty Forest. So this is a glaze that I've mixed up myself, following the recipe that's on glazy.org. Quite liking this glaze. It does craze sometimes, so I'm going to see if I can tweak that a little bit. But anyway, for now, this is the glaze exactly as he has posted it. So that's a dip. It's cracking on the inside, which it does sometimes. Doesn't seem to bother it too much. So we'll test it on top of that. We're going to test it on a dish with snow, which I can't show you yet because it's drying very, very, very slowly. Also, I want to clean that up. We're also going to put it onto a mug with 3 coats of Spectrum Nori Green. And the reason I'm doing this is because I absolutely adore the combination of Sangria and Nori Green. And I have done another mug very much like this in that combo so that we can compare side by side to see what the 2 of them look like. And because I feel reasonably confident, famous last words, that this combo is going to work out. So I'm going to go all in and test it on a mug. Wish me luck. Last but definitely not least, we're going to give Sunset Glaze a try. So I'm going to do Amaco's Marigold and then Spectrum's Sangria, and then Bougainvillea at the top. And we'll see if we can get something that kind of looks like a sunrise or a tequila sunrise, depending on your preferences. All right, we got a lot of glazing to do. Let's get to it. I've had a look at the analytics in YouTube, and I have discovered that most of you are not interested in the actual glazing portion of these videos, which is totally cool. The reason I include it generally, or the reason I have included it, is so that you can get an idea of, how your glazing might compare to mine. Do you use a different kind of brush? Do you put more glaze on each time you do a coat? How does it compare? Because that makes a huge difference with these brush-on glazes. So this time around, I'm just going to fast forward. I'll do, some pretty glamour shots of the glazing process. And just know that whatever results I get, you will want to test yourself to see, if I get beautiful results from 2 coats, don't necessarily assume that that's going to work for you and do a whole kiln load with 2 coats. Please do a tester first on your clay with your glazing style to make sure that you're going to get the results that you want. The other reason that I record all of the glazing is because sometimes I don't remember what I've done and I have to go back and look at the video to find out if I've done 1 coat or 2 coats or what have you. That is getting better now that I have my Post-it note system. I have a much easier time keeping track of what I'm doing. The next step is to remember to keep the Post-it notes so that when I do the end part of the glaze test and show you the results, I actually remember what I've done. Okay, so that is 3 coats of Nori Green and 3 coats of Bougainvillea. No, yes, 3 coats of Bougainvillea, done, ready to go in the kiln. Well, after I tidy up the bottom, which I'm absolutely going to remember to do this time. This one has a dip of Misty Forest, 2 coats of Bougainvillea around the top. And I only did 2 coats because I am somewhat concerned that this might be a very runny combo. Misty Forest is usually pretty well behaved on its own, but I don't know, I feel like it's going to be a runner. So 2 coats and, of course, a kiln cookie on the bottom. So that one is done. It has 3 coats on the inside and 2 on the outside. I strongly suspect that we're going to end up with a big pool of glaze in the middle of this one. I think 3 coats is probably too much, but we'll see. And same with this one. It has 3 coats on the inside and 2 on the outside. The dish with Amaco Snow Celadon is done as well. So I sprinkled a few of the chips that kind of fell off of the bottle when I opened it, just for fun to see what that will look like. And then I did 3 coats around the edge and around the outside as well. I made a note for myself also that the snow Celedon completely dried before I layered the next glaze on. And I made that note because often that causes crawling. So I'll be interested to see whether it does crawl or not. Last but definitely not least, we have our little vase. So the bottom of this has 3 layers of Amaco's Marigold Celadon. And then I've got 2 layers of Sangria and then 2 layers of the Bougainvillea. I'm going to look that up. Our results are out of the kiln, but first we have a matter of protocol to address, and that is that I have finally looked up how to pronounce this, and it is Bougainvillea, Bougainvillea. It just doesn't trip off the tongue. I don't know, it's a really awkward name for a very pretty color. Bougainvillea is how you say it. Now you know. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's have a look at our results Okay, we're going to start with our two control testers here. Both of these were 3 times Bougainvillea on the inside and 2 times Bougainvillea on the outside. It didn't move at all, so I wonder if I could have done 3 coats on the outside and it would have been okay. I don't want to spoil any suspense, but nothing ran onto the kiln shelf. Very pleased with that and a little surprised. Both of these guys look very similar. So the color of the clay didn't have too much of an impact in terms of the color of the glaze. Whether that's good or bad just depends on you, really. To my mind, it doesn't really matter if the glaze is exactly the same on different colors of clay or if it changes dramatically. It's just that you want to know what it's going to look like. And I really wish more companies showed you test tiles on different colors of clay. Amaco does that, and I think they might be the only one that I've seen that does that, and it's a really great idea. So, hot tip for all the glaze companies out there, pick up that habit and start showing us what the glaze looks like on different clays. This behaved reasonably well, but in the corner here where it's pooled, there's a little bit of pinholing, not blistering, but that kind of orange peel texture. I get the same thing with Sangria. And spoiler alert, you're going to be hearing that a lot during this wrap up. Other than that, it's a very pretty color. This result is pinker than Sangria in the sense that the undertones aren't quite as orange as Sangria, but it's really similar. And you're going to see that when we directly compare it later on. But pink floating glaze, it's a beautiful pink. If you're looking for that kind of bright pink color, I really do think that Spectrum do this better than anyone else that I've found. This was a porcelain test tile, which means that, well, as I say that, I'm second guessing myself. There could be a little bit of stoneware in here, but this is as clean a result as you're going to get in terms of the clay not impacting the color of the glaze itself. And you can feel a little bit of a rough texture in here. So, maybe 2 on the bottom and 3 on the sides might be a little nicer. And on the outside where we had just the 2 coats, it is a little darker. You get less of that float happening, but still pretty good coverage, really. You can see the clay texture coming through a little bit here, but nothing that really makes it look like it hasn't got enough glaze on it, if that makes sense. It just looks like the glaze is a little more translucent than this is. This is pretty opaque. On the buff clay, same thing, really. It's still quite pink, even less of the orange undertones, I think, on the buff clay than there is on the porcelain. But it does get that kind of orange peely, slightly pinholed texture where it gets thick. It did not, however, completely overwhelm the texture, which I really thought it was going to do. It was not a super deep texture by any means. This is a roller that I carved myself, and here it kind of barely made an imprint at all, and so it's covered that up. But some of it is still popping through, even on the bottom here. Let's have a look at some of the combos. Okay, we'll start with snow. Now, I suspected that this would crawl because the snow did completely dry before I put the next layer on. And with snow, with the Amaco Celadons, that often leads to disasters with the dipping version of their Celadons, not the brushing version. This time around, though, it behaved really nicely. The snow did not change the color of this glaze at all. Bougainvillea did run. This, unfortunately, looks a little bit like blood spatter. It's like this is Dexter's Everything Bowl. I don't know. I don't know that I'll be doing that again. But the two of them do play quite well together. So if you're interested in combining the white with the pink, maybe don't do the glaze speckles, but this overlap looks lovely. And it was really well behaved on the outside as well. Then we have Bougainvillea with Misty Forest from Old Forge. So Misty Forest is an interesting glaze. This, I didn't keep track of where everything was in the kiln, but I'm going to say that this was on a lower level because this is all really kind of homogeneous, like there's no variation happening in this glaze. And when it fires a little bit hotter, like a 6.5 instead of a 5.5 or a 6, you get more kind of dark green and then light green coming through, that kind of thing. So all of that to say that this might change a little bit if it was fired a little hotter. The two of them behaved well together. There's no crawling or pinholing or any of that, but it also didn't really do much. You can see a little bit of the Bougainvillea coming down into the Misty Forest here, but you can still really see that straight line between the Bougainvillea and the Misty Forest. The inside looks like it melded together better, but that's just because I was not careful with how I glazed it. For me, I like it when they come together and do something a little bit more interesting than these two did. Not a bad result. There's nothing technically wrong with this pot, but just not something that I'll probably be doing again. Then we have our little vase, and we did the Amaco Marigold on the bottom, and then did the Sangria, and then the Bougainvillea at the top. And what I was hoping for was a really smooth gradient so that it would kind of look like a sunrise or a sunset. That is not what I got. Let me show you these and I will explain why. One of these mugs has Sangria from Spectrum on it, and the other one has Bougainvillea on it. And if you cannot tell which is which at a glance, that's okay. I probably wouldn't be able to either. I was really surprised to see how similar these two glazes performed. So this one has the Bougainvillea on it, and this one has the Sangria on it. There are differences, of course. The Sangria is a little darker red to it. The Bougainvillea has a little bit of a lighter pink float to it, but there's not a huge difference between these two glazes. That is why I think my vase tester didn't turn out quite the way I had expected it to. The two glazes were just so similar that they just kind of ran into each other without much of a change between them. The Celedon did do a great job of stopping the movement of the two glazes. It didn't move very much at all. There's a couple of runs here, but they actually dripped. When I was glazing it, the glaze was wet and it just, kind of dribbled down. So Amaco Celadon do a good job of stopping the running. The Bougainvillea mug turned out absolutely lovely. It's got a nice floating effect with that lighter pink. There's no pinholes. It's very, very pretty. So what's the verdict on Spectrum's Bougainvillea? It's a beautiful glaze. Honestly, if I have to pick between the two of these, I'm gonna pick Sangria. And I'll tell you why. It's because it's easier to say. I just don't like the word Bougainvillea. I don't know what it is about that word. Anyway, that's kind of a dumb reason to pick one glaze over another, but really these two are so similar that, I feel like you're kind of tossing a coin to a certain extent. The Bougainvillea definitely does have more of that light pink tone to it. It has less of the orange kind of tone to it. So if that's a deciding factor for you, then you're going to want Bougainvillea. If you're looking for more of that kind of orangey, brighter red peeking through, then you're going to lean towards the Sangria. One caveat I will say about these testers is that I found that the real pinholing and blistering issues that I had with Sangria and also with rose quartz, now that I think about it, didn't show up until I'd been using them for a while. Just different firing temperatures or different glaze combinations, that kind of thing. So I would say that the tests I have done here are not enough for me to definitively say that Bougainvillea is going to behave itself all of the time. But this is a really promising beginning for a glaze. For me, honestly, this and Sangria are so close to each other that I'm not sure I would keep both in my studio, but I would love to hear if some of you have some layering combos where Bougainvillea really performs very differently from Sangria. I'd love to hear about some of those because obviously, I try to test as many combinations as I can, but there's there's a limit to what I can get done in time to be able to bring you guys video each week. So thank you to everybody who voted in that poll for giving me an excuse to test Bougainvillea. Thank you everyone for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it. And until next time, happy potting.